Empires are measured in stars. Power is calculated in conquered systems, and queens do not kneel. That day, a queen knelt, because a human stepped between her and death. Blaster fire split the sky. Steel towers collapsed in screaming spirals of light. A blue-skinned queen with long, elegant ears stood surrounded by ruin, her armies shattered, her fate seconds from sealing the outcome of a war. The laws that protected her were too far away. The soldiers sworn to defend her had fallen. The power that defined her was no longer enough. Then a human moved. He was not the strongest in the room, not the fastest, not the most advanced life form on the battlefield, but he chose to stand in the fire. And as his blood spread across broken metal, the most untouchable ruler in the galaxy forgot protocol, forgot pride, and knelt beside him, tears falling not for an empire, not for a victory, but for one fragile, impossible man. Because in that moment, the war did not just change. The meaning of strength did. The first thing Elias Ward registered was the sound of something expensive exploding. Not the sharp crack of a rifle or the metallic groan of failing bulkheads. He knew those intimately, but the particular crystalline shriek of Aelyra war glass shattering under stress. It carried a pitch too high for human comfort, like a choir of offended mathematicians. "Well," he muttered inside his helmet, "that's going to void someone's warranty." The battlefield inside the fractured command spire was a cathedral of drifting sparks and collapsing light. Ionized smoke rolled in slow violet tides, caught in the flicker of failing shield emitters. Human exosuits moved in tight formations along the lower gantries, their boots clanging against exposed latticework. Above them, Aelyra warriors leapt between hovering platforms with impossible grace, their bioluminescent armor flashing in coded bursts. "Captain," Lieutenant Rao's voice snapped across the comm, strained but steady. "Dominion phalanx has collapsed on the eastern tier. The Queen's signal just spiked and dropped. She's isolated." Elias coughed as a nearby conduit burst, showering him with incandescent fragments that his suit politely informed him were inadvisable to inhale. "Of course she is," he said, "because today wasn't interesting enough." He pivoted, magnetic boots locking and releasing as he climbed the fractured spine of the spire. His exosuit compensated for gravity distortions caused by overlapping shield fields. Above, through the haze, he glimpsed her standard, an arc of pale blue light bending like a crescent horizon. The Aelyra Queen stood where the upper command ring had partially collapsed, her remaining guards forming a thinning perimeter. She was unmistakable even through chaos. Her skin glowed a serene shade of blue beneath the erratic strobes of weapon fire, as though she carried her own twilight. Long ears swept back from her temples, trembling faintly with each nearby detonation, catching the air like delicate antennae. Her blonde hair spilled in luminous strands over her armored shoulders, bright against the ruin. She held no weapon. She did not need one to command attention. Another wave of enemy shock troops surged from the breach, mercenaries in jagged composite plating, their rifles vomiting white-hot plasma. The Queen's guards fell one by one, shields overloading in brief suns of defensive brilliance. Elias felt the calculation try to form in his mind. Distance, ammunition, probability of survival. He shut it down. "Rao," he said calmly, as though ordering lunch, "reroute any unit with a pulse to the upper ring. And if I die, delete my browser history." "That's not how." "Figure it out." He broke from cover and ran. Blaster fire streaked past him, turning the air into a lethal geometry of light. His suit's kinetic dampeners howled as a shot clipped his shoulder, spinning him halfway around. He corrected, boots slamming against an angled beam, and launched himself upward with a burst from his back thrusters. The Queen saw him coming. For a fraction of a second, her gaze locked onto his visor. There was recognition there, not of him perhaps, but of the madness in the decision. He landed between her and the advancing line. "Your Majesty," he said, raising his rifle, "I strongly recommend not being here." Her voice cut through the chaos, melodic and sharp. "This is my command." "Right," he replied, firing 3 controlled bursts that dropped the nearest mercenary. "Well, it's currently very poorly decorated." A plasma bolt slammed into his chest plate. The impact drove him back a step. Warnings cascaded across his visor in polite red script. He fired again and again. The Queen moved then, not retreating, but stepping closer, her presence radiating a field of faint harmonic light. The air around them vibrated as her personal shield tried to reconstitute, flickering unstable. One of her fallen guards twitched at her feet. More enemies poured through the breach. Elias switched his rifle to overcharge. "I'm going to need you," he said through clenched teeth, "to survive this." Her long ears angled slightly toward him, as if focusing on a frequency only she could hear. "Human," she said, "you are outmatched." "Story of our species," he replied. He emptied the rifle into the breach and then discarded it, drawing his sidearm. The recoil shuddered through his bones. Something hot and violent punched into his thigh. His suit injected stimulants without asking permission. "Captain." Rao's voice cracked. "2 minutes out." "I'll send you a postcard," Elias said. A mercenary broke through the thinning smoke, blade humming with gravitational distortion. Elias intercepted the strike with his forearm plate. The blade sheared through outer alloy and bit deep. Pain flared white. He grinned anyway. "That's rude." He drove his sidearm under the attacker's chin and fired. The body dropped. Another plasma bolt struck him in the abdomen. This one breached. The world tilted. He staggered but did not fall. The Queen's hand hovered inches from his shoulder, as though uncertain whether she was permitted to touch him. Royal protocol warred with something far older. He glanced back at her. "With respect," he said, breath hitching, "if you have a dramatic speech prepared, now would be excellent timing." Her lips parted, but what came was not a speech. It was a sharp command in the Aelyri tongue that resonated like struck crystal. A ripple of energy burst outward from her, destabilizing the front line of attackers long enough for Elias to fire 2 more shots. His vision blurred at the edges. "Reinforcements arriving," Rao shouted. As if summoned by narrative necessity, human drop units crashed through the upper hull in a rain of debris, magnetic grapples anchoring to the spire's skeleton. Aelyri interceptors flared into existence beyond the breach, their sleek forms slicing through enemy ranks. The pressure shifted. The mercenaries faltered. Elias attempted to take a step forward and discovered that his body had filed a formal complaint. He dropped to one knee. The Queen turned fully toward him now. Up close, her features were no longer distant or mythic. They were alarmingly real. Blue skin luminous beneath battle light. Blonde hair tangled with ash. Long ears trembling openly. "You are injured," she said, which felt like an impressive understatement. "Minor inconvenience," he replied faintly. Blood pooled beneath him, bright and defiantly human against shattered alien metal. The last of the attackers were driven back. The noise receded from deafening to merely catastrophic. He tried to stand again, mostly out of habit. His legs disagreed. The Queen knelt. Several Aelyri officers froze at the sight, their armor dimming in visible shock. She ignored them. Her hands, slender, radiant, pressed against the breach in his suit, luminous energy seeping between her fingers in a futile attempt to stabilize torn flesh. "Medical units," she called, and her voice cracked on the second word. Elias blinked up at her. "I think," he said carefully, "I may have misjudged the decor." A sound escaped her then, half laugh, half sob. Tears traced down blue skin, catching light like liquid stars. He stared, confused. "I didn't mean to." "Be silent," she whispered, leaning closer, as though proximity could anchor him to existence. "You reckless, impossible human." Sirens wailed as medics, human and Aelyri both, converged. Someone cut away sections of his armor. Cold air struck open wounds. He felt hands lifting him onto a grav stretcher. The ceiling swam overhead, fractured and distant. The Queen's face remained above him, framed by smoke and light, her long ears lowered now, unguarded. "You should not have done this," she said. He tried to shrug and regretted it immediately. "Seemed," he murmured, "like a good idea at the time." Darkness pressed at the edges of his vision. As the stretcher lifted, he saw her still kneeling amid ruin, blue hands stained red, pride abandoned in the wreckage of protocol. For a fleeting, absurd moment, he wondered if he would be reprimanded for bleeding on Imperial property. Then the world narrowed to a single point of light. her voice calling his name, stripped of title, stripped of distance. And even as he slipped toward unconsciousness, he felt something shift in the space between empires. Not strategy, not power, something far more dangerous. Elias decided, upon regaining consciousness, that if this was death, it was unnecessarily bright. He attempted to squint. His eyelids complied halfway before a gentle chime sounded somewhere above him. Vital signs increasing, a voice observed in precise, melodic standard. Cortical activity stabilizing. That's encouraging, Elias croaked. I was worried I'd misplaced my cortex. He tried to lift his hand and discovered it was attached to several translucent filaments that glowed faintly as they threaded into his skin. The surface beneath him felt neither metal nor fabric, but something warm, faintly pulsing, as though the bed were politely aware of his existence. Please remain still, the same voice instructed. I would, he replied, but I have a strong emotional attachment to dramatic flailing. Memory returned in fragments. The breach, the plasma, blue hands stained red. He turned his head. The chamber curved in organic arcs, walls grown rather than assembled. Veins of soft light traced through the surfaces like constellations caught in amber. A trio of Aelyra medical specialists stood nearby, their armor replaced with flowing biotechnical garments that shimmered in subtle hues. Between them floated a human surgical drone projecting layered diagnostic scans. He was in the Dominion flagship. Well, he muttered, either I survived or I'm being interrogated very gently. A human voice answered from somewhere to his left. If this is interrogation, it's the most expensive room I've ever seen. He shifted again and winced. Lieutenant Rao sat in a contoured chair, helmet off, hair plastered to his forehead. You look terrible, Rao added helpfully. Thank you, Elias said. I aim for consistency. One of the Aelyra healers stepped forward, her long ears angled toward him with clinical interest. Your humor indicates neural coherence, she said. This is favorable. Put that on my performance review. A soft movement near the chamber's entrance drew his attention. The queen stood there. She wore no battlefield armor now. Instead, a mantle of living fabric draped over her shoulders, shifting in faint waves of light that echoed her pulse. Her blue skin seemed calmer here, luminous rather than blazing. Her blonde hair fell freely, unbound by war. The long sweep of her ears tilted forward as she stepped closer, unguarded in a way no broadcast had ever shown. Every Aelyra in the room lowered their gaze. Rao blinked, then scrambled halfway to his feet before remembering he was technically a guest in a foreign empire's medical sanctum. He settled for an awkward nod. Your Majesty, he said. She inclined her head, but her focus remained on the man embedded in medical filaments. You have regained consciousness, she said. Elias attempted a bow from a prone position and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through his torso like an offended star. Working on it, he wheezed. One of the healers emitted a soft, reproachful tone. Excessive movement may disrupt cellular reconstruction. Right, Elias said. Let's not disrupt the reconstruction. I just had this body repaired. The queen moved to his side. Up close, he noticed faint irregularities in her breathing, subtle enough that no one else might detect them. Her composure was intact, but effort held it together. You sustained catastrophic internal damage, she said evenly. 3 major organ ruptures, extensive vascular compromise. Human survival probability under such conditions is statistically negligible. I've never been very good at statistics. Rao coughed to hide a laugh. The queen's lips twitched, barely, but the motion transformed her expression in a way that made Elia's chest tighten for reasons unrelated to trauma. The Aelyra biocircuit integrated with your physiology, one healer explained. Your cells respond unpredictably to photonic lattice infusion. That's a polite way of saying we had no idea what would happen, Rao translated. Correct, the healer agreed. Elias blinked slowly. So I might wake up glowing. You are already glowing, Rao said. Slightly, it's unsettling. Elias glanced down. Beneath the translucent field over his abdomen, faint threads of blue light pulsed through sutured flesh. Well, he murmured, I've always wanted to be memorable. Silence settled, softer than the battlefield's roar but heavy in its own way. The queen's gaze lowered to where her hand hovered above his repaired wound. She did not touch him yet. "You should not have intervened," she said quietly. "Here we go," Elias sighed. "I knew there'd be a performance review. This was not a jest. I know." He turned his head toward her fully. "But if I'd let you die, the paperwork would have been worse." Rao choked outright. The queen studied him as though recalibrating a long-held theory. "You placed yourself between me and termination," she said. "You understood the lethality." "Yes, you are aware that I command an empire spanning 73 systems. I heard something like that, and yet you acted without hesitation." He considered that. The truth felt embarrassingly simple. "You were about to get shot," he said. Seemed inefficient. For a moment, something unguarded flickered across her features. Her long ears lowered slightly, not in submission, but in something more intimate. Vulnerability, perhaps. "When you fell," she said, voice thinning at the edges, "I experienced a disruption." Rao glanced at Elias as if to say, "You broke the queen." Elias cleared his throat. "Disruption like structural failure or existential crisis?" She ignored the humor this time. "I have been conditioned since emergence to prioritize the dominion above all individual variables," she said. "When you were struck, that prioritization fractured." The admission hung in the air like a forbidden frequency. Elias swallowed. "I'm sorry." Her eyes met his direct, unwavering. "I felt fear," she said. No one in the chamber moved. He attempted a grin, though it wavered. "That's understandable. I look very dramatic when bleeding." A sound escaped her then, half incredulous, half unwilling laughter. It broke the tension like a fracture line releasing pressure. "You reduce severity with levity," she observed. "It's a hobby." Rao leaned back in his chair. "It's a coping mechanism. We've tried uninstalling it. Doesn't work." The queen's gaze returned to Elias' wound. Slowly, deliberately, she placed her hand over the bioluminescent field. Blue light flared softly, harmonizing with the faint glow inside him. "I will not issue a reprimand," she said. "Generous. I will, however, request that you refrain from repeating this behavior." "No promises." Her eyes narrowed faintly. That was not humor. Also not a promise. Another healer stepped forward. "He requires extended restoration. Human regenerative capacity is limited." "Hey," Elias protested weakly. "We regenerate emotionally, sometimes." Rao snorted. "Debatable." The queen straightened, composure settling back into place like armor. Yet something had changed. The distance that once defined her posture no longer fully returned. "The war continues," she said, "but its trajectory has altered." "How so?" Elias asked. "Your action has propagated across both fleets. Human units display increased cohesion metrics. Aelyra Command has begun reassessing tactical assumptions regarding human resilience." "Resilience," Rao repeated. "That's what we're calling reckless stupidity now." "Language evolves," the queen replied smoothly. Elias shifted slightly, grimacing as pain flared again. "So I get shot once and suddenly I'm a case study." "You are already a case study," one healer said. He stared at the ceiling. "Fantastic." A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Data scrolled across a suspended holographic field, fleet movements, shield harmonics, casualty projections. The queen glanced at it briefly, then back to him. "You altered more than a battle," she said. He held her gaze. "Good." Silence returned, but this time it was not fragile. Rao stood reluctantly. "I'll let you two discuss galactic philosophy. Try not to destabilize the Empire while I'm gone." "Noted," Elias said. As the lieutenant exited, the chamber seemed to narrow around the two of them. "You will remain under observation," she said. "I will authorize continued integration of Aelyra biocircuitry to support your recovery." "That sounds expensive." "It is. Put it on my tab." Her lips curved again, more certain now. "You do not possess sufficient credit." "Story of my life." She studied him for a long moment, then spoke more quietly. "When you regain full mobility, I will require your presence." "For what?" She tilted her head slightly, long ears angling with quiet intent. "To stand beside me." He blinked. "On a battlefield, on a platform." "Ah," he murmured. public relations more dangerous. A faint glimmer touched her eyes. Indeed. He exhaled slowly, exhaustion pulling at him once more. "Your Majesty," he said softly, humor thinning but not vanishing. "Next time you're cornered in a collapsing tower, could you perhaps schedule it at a more convenient hour?" For a heartbeat, she looked almost startled. Then she laughed, clear and unrestrained, the sound echoing through living walls that had never before carried such a note from their sovereign. "I will consult my calendar," she replied. As sedation eased back over him and the lights dimmed to a softer spectrum, Elias felt the weight of pain, of war, of impossible alliances. Yet beneath it, something steadier pulsed in rhythm with the faint blue glow beneath his skin. Not obligation, not strategy, connection. And somewhere beyond the medical chamber's curved walls, fleets shifted course, not because of superior firepower, but because a queen had knelt and a human had refused to step aside. By the time Elias was permitted to stand without 3 separate medical systems protesting, the war had developed a personality disorder. Human Fleet Command called it strategic fluidity. The Aelyra Dominion called it adaptive recalibration. Elias called it everyone panicking more efficiently. He stood at the edge of the Dominion flagship's primary command platform, adjusting the collar of a freshly fabricated uniform that felt far too ceremonial for someone who had recently been declared statistically negligible. The faint blue threads beneath his skin still pulsed when he moved too quickly, like his body was quietly reminding him who had helped stitch it back together. "Try not to fall over," Rao muttered beside him. "Diplomatic incidents are harder to survive than plasma bolts." "I feel fantastic," Elias replied. "Lightheaded, slightly luminous, possibly immortal." "You are not immortal," said the Queen. She stood across from him, framed by the curved arc of the observation field. Beyond it, fleets drifted in careful formation, human cruisers angular and scarred, Aelyra vessels sleek and radiant. The uneasy line between them no longer felt like a border. It felt like a seam. Her blue skin glowed softly beneath the chamber's harmonic light. Her blonde hair flowed freely over her shoulders, no longer bound in rigid ceremonial arrays. The long sweep of her ears angled toward the gathered commanders, attentive but unguarded. Today she did not stand alone. "Right," Elias said. "Not immortal, just annoyingly durable." A ripple of restrained amusement passed through several human officers. Aelyra commanders attempted dignity and failed in subtle ways. The Queen stepped forward. Her voice carried not as an amplified broadcast, but as a resonance that seemed to settle directly into bone. "Across 73 systems," she began, "the Dominion has measured strength in longevity and dominance. We have equated survival with superiority." Elias shifted his weight, careful not to wince. "We have now encountered a variable that disrupts that equation," she continued. Rao leaned closer to Elias. "That's you. You're the variable. I always suspected." Her gaze moved to him briefly, then returned to the assembly. "Humans are physically fragile by comparison," she said plainly. "Their lifespans are brief. Their biological structures are inefficient by our metrics." "Hey," Elias murmured. "And yet," she continued, the faintest curve touching her lips, "their capacity to interpose themselves between destruction and another life exceeds predictive modeling." Silence followed. Elias felt it then, not the weight of ceremony, but the weight of choice. The old version of him might have hidden behind humor entirely, deflecting the gravity of the moment. The new version understood that jokes worked best when anchored to truth. She turned to him fully. "Stand with me," she said. He stepped forward. Together they faced both fleets. "I was present at the collapse of the Eastern Command Spire," she said. "I was cornered. My guard had fallen. A human officer placed himself between me and termination." A faint pulse of blue light flickered beneath his uniform, as if his body objected to being referenced. "He sustained catastrophic injury," she said. "He continued to fight." Elias raised a hand slightly. "In fairness, I was running on adrenaline and poor decision-making." A few human officers laughed outright. Even one Aelyra commander emitted a quiet harmonic trill. The Queen did not reprimand him. "When he fell," she said, I experienced fear, not for the Dominion, but for him. The admission moved through the chamber like a shockwave far more destabilizing than any weapon. I knelt, she continued. I abandoned protocol. I chose the individual over the image of invulnerability. Elias felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. Strength, she said, is not diminished by compassion, it is clarified by it. She extended her hand. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, not from doubt, but from understanding. This was not about gratitude. It was about alignment. He took her hand. Blue light and human warmth met openly before two civilizations. I propose, she said, voice steady, the formation of a joint strategic command. Not alliance by necessity, integration by choice, human unpredictability paired with Aelyra precision. A human admiral cleared her throat. You're suggesting permanent coordination? I am suggesting evolution, the Queen replied. Murmurs rippled. Data projections flared, models recalculating outcomes under unified command structures. Casualty curves bent, resource distributions stabilized. Rao whispered, we just accidentally improved galactic stability. Elias exhaled slowly. Add that to my resume. Debate followed, measured, intense, but no longer poisoned by distrust. Human tacticians argued for flexibility. Aelyra strategists insisted on harmonic coherence. Somewhere in the exchange, laughter began appearing where suspicion once lived. Hours later, the vote concluded. Unanimous. The seam between fleets dissolved into coordinated formation patterns, shield frequencies synchronizing in elegant convergence. War did not end in that moment, but it changed. In the weeks that followed, joint task forces pushed back enemy incursions with a fluidity neither side had achieved alone. Human boarding units adapted to Aelyra shield rhythms. Aelyra interceptors adjusted to human improvisational flanking. Elias returned to limited field duty against medical recommendation and royal preference. You will not repeat your previous recklessness, the Queen said during one such deployment briefing. No promises, he answered automatically. Her long ears angled sharply. That is not reassuring. He met her gaze, steady now in a way he had not been before. I don't throw myself into fire because I have a death wish, he said quietly. I do it because sometimes someone has to stand there. She studied him, searching for flippancy. She did not find it. You have altered my calculus, she said, and you've altered mine. How? He considered the question seriously. I used to think strength was endurance. He flexed his fingers, feeling the faint echo of blue energy beneath his skin. I once believed survival was enough, he said. Now I think meaning matters more. Silence settled between them, comfortable earned. Elias Ward, she said softly without title, you stood between me and the fire. He met her gaze. You knelt, he replied. That was harder. A slow breath left her. Across the viewport, human and Aelyra vessels drifted in unified formation, shield frequencies intertwined in steady, luminous harmony. True strength, she said, is not the absence of vulnerability. It's choosing it, he finished. She extended her hand again, not as a ruler commanding allegiance, but as a partner in something newly forged. He took it. No sirens wailed, no glass shattered. Just two figures, one blue and luminous with long, elegant ears, one stubbornly human with faint alien light beneath his skin, standing at the threshold of a quiet